It's time for another round of
PatGPT.
PatGPT is brought to you by FOMO Sapiens, the podcast for entrepreneurial thinkers. It's the show where I, Patrick J. McGinnis, share some of my own entrepreneurial thinking in the form of inspiration, practical ideas, and knowledge that you can use at work and in your daily life. Today's topic is how to cultivate a creative practice. All right, PatGPT, start generating. So why do I care about this? Well, the power of creativity is our theme this season. And you're going to hear lots of guests talking about coming up with new ideas, right? And as much as we'd love to think that those things just pop into our heads, they may do so. But a lot of times you just got to kind of, like anything else, it's like going to the gym. You know, you go there, you set aside time to work out, say you want to train for a race, you stretch, you do the exercise, and then in the process, you build muscles. And then it's just easier to run the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day. Like you got to take breaks. You can't run every day. You can't run 10 miles every day. But if you set aside time to practice working up to that, then over time, you will in fact build up those muscles. So that's how I think about creativity. Now, as you probably heard me say, if you listen to the show, we start out creative as kids and then the world beats it out of us. And so it is our job to remember that being the creative one oftentimes is a massive unlock, and it is incumbent upon us to beat it back into ourselves through a series of routines and customs and creative ideas that can get us back into the place where we're able to think differently. Because creativity doesn't have to be writing a book or painting a painting or writing a song. That's all fine. That's really nice to do, obviously. But creativity can be things like coming up with a creative way to source new customers, could be coming up with a novel idea for a marketing spin, could be thinking differently about the people on your team and how they should be utilized or what you should be doing with your time, right? It's just about questioning what we do on a day-to-day basis and then finding a different way to potentially do some sort of thing. That's creativity. So that's what we're going to talk about right after this break.
FOMO.
All right, the topic is how to cultivate a creative practice. Let's get started. Number one, set up a routine. Put it on your calendar. I do this. I have these blocks of time I put on my calendar that are unstructured creative thinking. I literally put an hour where I'm like, I'm just going to pick a topic and think about it. Or when you wake up in the middle of the night, rather than thinking about the terrible things, think about creative ideas. Now, that's a little less productive in the sense you may forget them by morning and then you have the anxiety of like, I have to remember this thing, but still interesting to try. Use a time when you're doing something passive, like folding the laundry, walking to work, taking the subway, driving somewhere. Obviously, you want to pay attention to the road, but the idea is to make a place in your day where there wasn't one before that you can be a bit creative. And what you can do that's kind of fun, that will actually prime your brain to be creative, is to have some little ritual to start this period of time. So you might say, all right, brain, 45 minutes creativity kicking off now. And then have a piece of paper nearby and just jot things down as you go along. You could actually intentionally decide before every session, I'm going to think about this thing or that thing. So just have a bit of a focus area or some sort of intentional area you want to spend your time on. But this is really important because if you don't figure out a consistent time to do this, just like anything else in life, you will not do it. So you want to do that. Number two, come up with a place, if you can, that is kind of your creative place, right? So what I like to do is go into nature. I really do find it helpful to go sit in a park or just go in the woods for a walk or something. If you can do that, that can be really good for you. It depends on the person, right? Some other people like to have a space they get into. So like maybe, you clear the desk and you just sit at your desk and sort of close your eyes or stare at a screen. Don't have the screen turned on. So, stare at the blank screen, maybe jot some things down. There's a bunch of different ways to do that, but just try to find a place where you feel comfortable, where you don't feel distracted. It'd be really cool if you could do it, to actually go to a place that you find inspiring, right? So maybe there's a place you can set up in your home where you put some like weird, koosh ball or, a bean bag or something like that. Just something that's kind of different that gets you out of your normal routine can be really powerful. So just think about creating a space where you can be creative. Number 3, don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to do things that are stupid, right? Push your boundaries. So what can be really fun to do in something like this is, say you're trying to come up with a solution like, okay, I'm trying to figure out a new idea for how I'm going to market the conference I am coming up with for my team. Okay, so like maybe at work we're coming up with a conference. Think of some really crazy ideas to start with. Oh my goodness, you know what we're going to do? We're going to get Taylor Swift to come. Well, obviously you're not. I mean, unless you're related to Taylor, she's busy. But just thinking that gets you started thinking, okay, who is a local equivalent of Taylor Swift? Is there like a local, newscaster? People love a newscaster that we can invite. Something like that. So just try to think of a big, crazy idea. Oh, you know what we're going to do? We're going to feed everybody mushrooms, magic mushrooms. Well, obviously you're not going to do that. But is there a fun sort of food that you could bring into the mix to get people excited? Just think crazy thoughts and then pair them back into things that are actually actionable. We're going to shoot people into space. Probably not. Could we bring them to a cool experience like an escape room, right? It's a weird way to get at it, but the idea is to like break free of the inhibiting things in your world. Think of things that are crazy and then back into things that are actually doable. Number 4, just keep at it. Write the things down, the ideas you come up with, reflect upon them, and then, iterate, edit them. Creativity isn't a one-time only kind of thing, right? It's process. So in writing a book, by the way, you write a lot of stuff that is total junk. But it's creatively interesting. And then you look at it and you're like, okay, that was terrible. But what can I do with this now? Where can I take this thing to make it useful to me? And so just adjusting, having feedback, reading through it, figuring it out, all that stuff is very powerful in terms of the creative process. And finally, my favorite part of all this, be a vacuum cleaner. Suck in creativity. Go see cool films. Go see cool art. Go meet interesting people. Read crazy books. Just try to consume content that is very creative and different. And I find, for example, I'll give you some examples of things that I found really inspiring. I read this book called On Picasso by Gertrude Stein. She wrote a book about Picasso, and she wrote it in the style using, it's very interesting. If you've heard of Cubism, that's when Picasso painted, where he would paint an item and you could see like it from multiple angles at once on the canvas. So it's like very interesting, crazy looking art. She tried to write in a Cubist style. And I got to tell you, when I first started reading it, I was like, what the heck is this? That book blew my mind. And it made me think differently about the world. Going to an art gallery and seeing some really, really experimental art, maybe you don't want to hang that on your wall, but it just makes you question, what is art, right? What is creativity? Gives you new ideas. Actually making your own art, buying a canvas and painting something. I mean, you don't have to be Picasso. Just create something new. Could be baking, cooking, who knows? But the idea is try to do things that are inspiring creatively, consume creative things, do creative things, and that will feed into everything else you're doing. Once you realize that you can paint a picture for your home, hang it on the wall and not fail, then why not come up with a new idea? All right, those are my 5. Again, set a regular schedule. Number 2, have a space for creativity. 3, embrace curiosity, experimentation. 4, iterate. And 5, suck in all that creative stuff around you and then, play with it, experiment with it, make things. Those will be very powerful. I'll be back on Thursday with another episode of FOMO Sapiens. But until then, take care of yourselves, FOMO Sapiens, and PatGPT, stop generating. FOMO Sapiens is recorded in New York City. Theme music is by Mike McGinnis and editing and post-production is by Josh Elstro. If you like today's show, please be sure to rate it and recommend it to your friends. And as always, you can find me at FOMOSapiens.com and at PatrickMcGinnis.com. To advertise on FOMO Sapiens, reach out to contact@FOMOSapiens.com.